Plotting versus pantsing, the age-old debate. This is the question that I am asked a lot about when I do writers events. I feel like whenever I do a writers event, this is what I'm on a panel about the most is plotting versus pantsing, like which is better? The answer is yes, you need both of them. I could probably wax poetic about this for several videos, so who knows? Maybe I'll make it a series. Hi, I'm Rashni Lamino. I'm an author, actress, voiceover artist, former game writer, songwriter. I've had a lot of creative hats over the years, and a lot of times people ask me stuff about my creative life, and I don't always have the chance to really get into details about it. So I thought I would put all my thoughts here. And if you have any questions about a creative life or you're curious about life behind the scenes of a creative life, here you go. So welcome to my channel and thanks for stopping by. And today we're going to talk about plotting versus pantsing. So first of all, what is plotting? What is pantsing? Pantsing is basically by the seat of your pants writing, by the seat of your pants creating. Hence the term pantsing. It's also been called discovery writing. I still like pantsing. I really do. I think it's more fun. And plotting is what it sounds like. You're planning out your book, your screenplay, your whatever, your project. And for terms of this, though, or for all purposes, we're going to be talking about this in terms of writing. So, right off the bat, I'm a pantser. I'm a total pantser. But I realized something. And I think this is why it's an important question. Because if you don't know your best style of writing, it's going to be really, really difficult for you to write. What do I mean by that? I think our brains kind of work a certain way, right? Some of us might be more left brain or right brained. Some of us might be more logical or intuitive. And I think you can switch back and forth depending on what the needs of the situation are. But at the same time, it's ironic because people who know me would think I'm a plotter. Like I have a day planner, I live by my calendar. For all intents and purposes, I'm a very organized person. I've worked as a personal assistant where even right now, I'm a caregiver to my mother and I organize and, plan out her life. So yeah, I'm organized. But yet, when I create, that organization does not serve me. And it's like pulling teeth for me to do that. And I thought about it. I think it's because now, don't get me wrong, I don't have children, so I don't know what kids are being taught in school these days. But looking back on my education, I had what my homeschooling mother friend called a classical education. And we were taught from a very early age to plan, plan for everything. I remember being in like the third or fourth grade, and we were graded on our outlines, for a short story or whatever. And it was like, point one, this is what happens. Point two, this is what happens, 2A, 2B, 2C. So we were taught to outline at a very early age. And then I think, we learned the mind mapping. I don't know if that's what it's still called or if people do it, but it's like, here's an idea in a bubble and then it connects to this bubble here. And then if that, it connects here. And we were taught that. And even it's funny because I remember being taught that and being graded on that, and that was that was the formula we were supposed to follow. And even when I came out to Los Angeles, everyone's like, you got to read Save the Cat, you got to read, whatever what is the Pixar, not the Pixar theory, but the Pixar there's a Pixar story structure, Dan Harmon's story circle, hero's journey, right? Joseph Campbell, but gotta follow Save the Cat, gotta do this, gotta do that. And I tried. I tried. I remember I had a friend who was a screenwriter, and I went to her house, and she had this big billboard, and it was like, act one with like 5 index cards, act two, color coded, all this stuff. I tried. Oh my gosh, I bought the billboard and I bought the index cards and I tried to plot it out and I couldn't do it. I couldn't get there. But what's worked for me is to just be like, okay, well, here's the premise. Here's where I need them to go. Let's go. Let's do it. And I've now written, where am I at now? My ninth book is nearing completion. I'm working on the audio for that. And I'm in the middle of the first draft for my 10th. And I've written now 10 full novels, or well, nine and a half, since 2020. So obviously, pantsing is working for me. And I'm glad because I think if I was still in the outline phase, I'd be like tearing my hair out. So, why does this matter? Why does this matter so much? Because you have to identify what works for you and you have to just go all in on it. And I think there's pitfalls for both. Again, I'm not a huge plotter. I've had to do it for other things. I'll talk about that in a future video. But there are pitfalls for pantsing. And I think if you know what the pitfalls are ahead of time, if you're like, I want to try this pantsing thing, but if you know what the pitfalls are ahead of time, then you can get through it and you'll be fine. So, first of all, if you're going to pants, the first piece of advice I would give you is plow through that first draft, be it a screenplay, be it your book, whatever. Set aside time and just get that first draft out. I'm not saying, like if it takes you a couple months or something, that's great. I would not go more than 2 or 3 months. That's why things like, now I know it's defunct, but NaNoWriMo would be really good for a pantser because it forces you to get X amount of words out within a set time frame. Deadlines work really good for me as a pantser. And the reason why I think it's good to plow through that first draft is if you let too much time go in between writing sessions or in between it just, you start that first draft, you're 20,000 words in, and then you put it away for a couple weeks, you will lose momentum and you will really literally quite lose the plot. As a good example, when I wrote my second book, Air of Memory and Shadow, I was about a third of the way in. And my mom, unfortunately, had a botched surgery. And so I had to go home to Michigan. And I was there with her for a couple months helping her recover. And I could kind of sort of write, but especially in the first couple weeks, she needed constant attention. So I couldn't really, I wanted to have like an hour or two to write. I didn't have uninterrupted time, and even when she was sleeping, I kind of had to keep an ear out for her and stuff like that. So it was about 3 or 4 months that I had to put that manuscript down. And by the time I returned back home and I was able to sit down with it, I was like, I don't remember what's going on in my story because I had such a broken amount of time in there where I couldn't focus on it that I was just like, I don't know. But I found with future books after that, if I can just plow through that first draft within like a month or two, even if it's not good, because it's not going to be good, it's your first draft, as long as the framework's there, the rewrites are easy. But I just have to get it out as fast as possible. So if you're a pantser, I recommend try to have uninterrupted time and get through as much of it as possible. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot harder for you. Um, Another thing I would say for pantsers is logic is king. And I would even argue character is king. This will probably be something I'll talk about in a future video as well. I am a huge fan. If I had to choose character over plot, I would say hands down character every time. My editor might not agree with me. He's a big plot guy. But I just think character is the most important thing because if a character is doing things logically, then your story will make sense, right? Meaning, if you say this character is a type A personality who must be in control of everything, then if you put them in a situation where they go on vacation and their perfect itinerary gets blown to smithereens and they just have to go with the flow and their luggage got lost and, their flight got delayed or what have you, As long as they respond logically to that scenario, the story would work, right? I would even argue, point one for the pantsers here, you don't know in life what's going to happen. You know, you might wake up and think, okay, today I'm going to go to work. And then after work, I'm going to go to the grocery store. And then I'm going to go to my kid's soccer game. And then I'm going to come home. Right. But you don't know when you go to work what you're going to say to your coworkers. In fact, right now, my cat's trying to get here on this video. I don't know what my cat's going to do. All right, baby, come on. Okay, okay. But yeah, you don't know exactly what you're going to say to your coworkers. You don't necessarily, okay, all right, hello, 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 hello. You don't necessarily know what's going to happen if you get to the grocery store and you're late because you had to stay late at work. Or maybe you forgot to get gas the day before and now you're late for your kid's soccer game. You know what I mean? Like, if you have a certain personality type in there, you know how you'd react. But again, you don't know what you would say in the moment until you're actually in the moment. And I think that's why I prefer pantsing, because we don't plan things down to the minutia like that. So as long, I think, if your characters are acting logical in the situations that you put them in, then pantsing is easy, you know? And of course, your characters are going to learn and grow as the time goes on. But a type A personality in general is not going to suddenly be like, oh, it's cool that my luggage was lost. Yeah, because that's not who they are inherently. So I'm a big believer in logic and character and knowing who they are. You approve of that? He's purring. I guess he likes that idea. Good boy. One nice thing about pantsing is this totally works. I don't believe that you have to know your entire world or lore, like the world building. I think as a pantser, even as a plotter, but I think as a pantser, the fact that you might not know everything happening, use that to your advantage. Okay? I write fantasy. We're big on world building. I will admit that I did not have my world lore really fleshed out until book 3. I didn't expect it to be a series. It's a 7-book series now, the Kingdom Legacy series. But when I was writing, I just was like, la la la, this is fun. And then I was like, a couple books later, I'm like, oh, I guess I really should be thinking about how magic works in this world and who's who and what's going on and how they all interconnect. I hadn't really thought it through that hard. And I would argue that even in real life, when you're in a situation, you learn things about your world, right? If you're talking about like world building, you learn about it in pieces through context, through observation. Very rarely is someone going to sit you down and, lore dump on you, because that's not normal. And I think we even kind of make fun of it nowadays in, you like the exposition character, right? Because they're like, oh my gosh, we got to get all this backstory out. No, you don't have to, honestly. And I think your book might be stronger if you just sparingly give out the information needed as it comes up, as it pertains to what's happening, which is great for a pantser because you probably haven't thought it through too much, honestly. Um, Take, for example, in real life, let's say you move to a new city and you make a friend group, like you're in a new group of friends and they've all known each other for 10 years or something. And as you get to know them, you have dinners with them, game nights, you go on a ski trip with them, whatever. And as you get to know them, you start to kind of go, oh, I think so and so used to date. These two used to date. I think she likes him, but he likes her. Ooh, I think that they're more frenemies than friends. You start to see those nuances, right? In the group. Nobody's going to sit you down on the first day and be like, okay, let me tell ya. Sally and Joe were together, but now Joe's with Betty and blah, blah, blah. Like, they're not going to do that. That's weird. So, why would we put that in our story? So, I think the fact that even in real life, you would have information like that as needed and sparingly, use it to your advantage as a pantser, for sure. There are times when you have to put on your plotter hat, and I will go into that in a future video because I've had to do it. It's difficult for me as a total pantser, but I think the biggest thing really, if you take away anything from this video, is figure out what your style is of writing and just go all in. And don't try to make yourself be something you're not. Like I said, I really think we're kind of railroaded into becoming planners, becoming plotters from an early age. And it's a good skill to have, but it might not necessarily be the skill that helps you level up. So get out there, create your art because the world needs your art. I hope you found this helpful. If you did, tell your friends about it, share it with people. You know where all the buttons are to like and subscribe and all that good stuff. And I will see you in a future video. I hope you have a lovely day.